Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the 3rd and 20 Dynasty Podcast. I'm JT, joined by Frank and Jake. No Lounis this week. Season 3, episode 23, and the playoffs are amongst us. The actual NFL playoffs, not the fantasy playoffs. And what this means if you're playing Dynasty is essentially, unless you're rooting for your team to win that made the playoffs, which congratulations, you're just hoping your players don't get hurt. You're just hoping your Dynasty players don't tear an ACL, don't tear their Achilles. You know, hopefully they look good, but you're just hoping no injuries. That's kind of where we're all at. But yeah, we also just had the college football playoff. Not great. Not great.
Well, that was probably like the worst championship game. Think of all the major sports. That was like the worst final game. It was a blowout by the time the second quarter rolled around. It was crazy.
I just turned it off. It wasn't even worth watching.
The one thing I will say, though, about the playoffs that we could introduce almost as a mini segment is that every year we have that young player kind of step up out of nowhere, a guy that was either late on the depth chart who gets like promoted into a role, maybe due to an injury or some other external factor, or that young player that may have been struggling, but by the time the playoff comes around and they need a guy to make plays, they start making plays. So, I mean, it's hard to speculate on who that could be. If you guys have a suggestion, feel free to shout it out. But there is always the one or two guys, like Devin Singletary, I remember, was like he completely popped off. Cam Akers, I think he may have been just later in the season, but especially in the playoffs, completely spiked his value all the way to the start of the next year.
Okay, so my bad, because I thought you were talking about the college football playoff at first.
No, NFL playoffs.
Yeah, Kenny McIntosh looked pretty good. All right, and NFL playoffs. I mean, you gotta look at like the newcomers. I would say are probably the people that you're gonna want to look at first. So like the Jaguars, for example. I mean, Zay Jones has kind of flown under the radar for most of the year. Like if you pulled up his stats right now, I guarantee you'd be surprised with how many points he scored. Trying to think of others that come to mind. Do you guys have any?
I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence. I mean, right now he's had a great season. I think people are starting to recognize that he ended up finishing a top 10 QB on the year. But in Dynasty right now, I believe he's still at around QB 9. I might be wrong, so I'm pulling it up. Oh, he's all the way up to QB 6 right now, which I think is more fair. But I do think that with a really good playoffs, if he puts together a great performance this week against the Chargers and, you know, makes it interesting versus the Bills, or is it the Bills or is he going to get Chiefs?
Well, it depends.
Either way, if he puts up a fight against either of those two teams, I think people are really going to start recognizing Trevor Lawrence as what we thought he was coming out, and that's going to put him at least, because he's right now 1,000 points behind QB5, which is Justin Herbert. I think it'll at least bring him within a couple hundred. Mm-hmm. So he has a lot of room, in my opinion, to move up here.
I'm thinking two teams that I'm interested in for potentially guys coming out of nowhere. I think one is Kansas City, simply because other than Travis Kelce, none of those guys are really consistent week in, week out options. And we've seen basically everyone in that starting lineup besides Mahomes and Kelce go down at some point. So with how much just of a shit show it seems to be with just Patrick Mahomes making plays to make it all happen, curious to see if anyone actually steps up. And then secondly, the Bucks, another team that have kind of just been looking for someone to consistently make plays all season. It'll be interesting to see if someone on the back end of the roster starts making plays and maybe gets a shot.
Well, now that we're talking about it, my brain started ticking. I thought of the main team, and I'm surprised you didn't bring them up, Jake. The Giants. I think Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James.
Yeah.
I mean,
not Richie James. Isaiah Hodgins.
Isaiah Hodgins has been.
I love Isaiah Hodgins.
He's been a top 24 receiver 4 of the past 5 weeks.
He has been the greatest pickup of I'm just talking NFL pickup, like actually getting him off the Bills practice squad mid-season and having him come in and do what he's done. I think has really shown. Give him a lot of credit, and I think he has room to make steps forward in this offense. I don't think he is a guy that's necessarily a 1-year wonder. I do think that is a good guy, a good name you brought up there, JT, just because I don't think the Giants will really want to invest another high-end draft pick into a receiver here. They've made a lot of steps forward, but that's clearly the biggest hole in the roster. I wouldn't be shocked, and this is getting into, I think, a guy we're going to talk about later, but to see him make a trade for a veteran wide receiver or just play it out, either way, I still see Isaiah Hodgins having a role in this offense next year, whether that's the number 2 receiver or if they just don't do anything. I think he's the number 1 receiver on this roster right now.
Dude, Isaiah Hodgins, when he came out, was like my favorite sleeper receiver. I picked him up in every single fucking league, but then his taxi maturity came up and then I dropped him. And then I dropped him in all those leagues. And then I tried to scramble him back up, but obviously he had, gotten picked up by other people at nearly the same time. I still have him in a bunch of leagues now, but very frustrating.
The funniest part about all this is the Bills beat reporters. I mean, they're notorious for hyping up their players. They never hype up Isaiah Hodgins. They would always hype up Isaiah McKenzie instead. They're like, Isaiah McKenzie's out here doing this and this. You never saw Isaiah Hodgins getting the shine. But yeah, I think he's here to stay too. I think he's like a legit player going into 2023.
Interesting, because that was, clearly Dable likes him, and he brought him in probably because he knows part of Dable's system and whatnot, but for not being able to, and injury was definitely a big factor, right? I know he missed his entire rookie year or something, and I think even in his sophomore season he was dealing with something else, but clearly Dable liked him. So I agree with you, Jake. That's a guy that maybe not necessarily as good of production as he's had this stretch this year, but certainly a guy to roster and potentially worth around like a 3rd round pick. But let's get into the segments though.
All right, switch gears.
Big news in the rookie drafts. Blake Corum, Michigan's star running back, is returning to Michigan, not declaring for the NFL draft. This kind of came out of nowhere because if there was any running back that completely increased the shit out of his draft stock, it was Blake Corum, because he was going absolutely nuclear this year. Apparently, this was due to his knee injury he had. It is now a full meniscus repair, which is going to take 6 months, which would mean he's going to miss the entire draft process, basically, right? Which there were some potential knocks on his athleticism. That's kind of how it is for any running back. If you're not a great athlete, that's just one of those positions where you look at the data, it's just hard to have success. Not impossible, but whatever. Now, this running back class is pretty loaded. I'm not sure any of us were necessarily huge on Blake Corum in terms of oh my God, top 3 running back, but definitely a good player. Is this like a sizable hit to the draft class, or is this just like it stinks, but it doesn't really matter?
Yeah, well, second part.
I think this is a guy, I lean more JT, but I do think Blake Corum was a guy I was at least looking at in the 2nd round range. So obviously he's not one of these guys that's going to, completely shake up draft boards, being projected to be a top 10 rookie pick or anything like that. But I did like him as a nice depth piece in this draft, and I do think it's going to weaken the back half of it, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I guess 2024 potentially gets another good player, which that's
right,
sizing up to be a pretty decent class.
Whatever. Non-early declare non-early declare running backs at that point. Good luck.
Yeah,
right,
he'll be like,
I got you. I'm taking a page out of your book.
To me, I care more about receiver than running back if we're talking early declare. But he'll be. I'll compare him to Zach Charbonnet from this year, a player that I like, but they did save another year. Kind of is a big knock on them. I'm probably not drafting him in the 1st round. I'll look for him in the 2nd, depending on what kind of year he has. But I mean, yeah, with how loaded this, not even from just top tier players, but just very good guys, I think this class has. I think he could have found himself getting lost in the shuffle, especially with injury concerns and the NFL being like I want my players now kind of league. I think he would have probably seen himself slip decently far in the NFL draft.
He's a really interesting prospect because I had watched only 2 of his games back, but for as small of a running back as he is, and he does have some good speed, at least in my opinion. I really didn't think that was a huge, oh shit, in this game. Good downhill runner, and he was very versatile in the passing attack. The question to me, though, was, okay, is he legitimately one of these Austin Eckler, maybe not Austin Eckler of now, but like beforehand, right? Like years ago when he wasn't as developed. Is he that type of player? Or is just he going to kind of be one of these undersized, I kind of rely too much on going downhill running backs and is just kind of mid in the passing game? It almost reminds me of what Clyde Edwards-Helaire has turned into, where that passing game element was, maybe it was just a product of the LSU offense and he, for whatever reason, was not able to figure it out. And then you kind of just have someone that, as a pure runner, is just average at best. But Blake Corum, I think as a downhill runner, he is pretty good. So I was very on the fence with what I was thinking about him and where I would value him from a dynasty perspective and a prediction of where he'd go in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add on. I think that's fair. I don't really have much more to add on Blake Corum. You guys don't. We can move on to some juicy NFL gossip.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, so came out today, I don't know, earlier this afternoon, we're recording on Tuesday, that the Cardinals are probably going to deal DeAndre Hopkins this offseason. I don't know if I necessarily thought that was unexpected, but I mean, when you have Kyler Murray, you definitely want an elite receiver with him. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. What do you got? What are your guys' main thoughts?
Well, the first thought that comes to mind is that this might just be because that receiver room is a little crowded and, they're going to have to pay Hollywood, who they just traded for, or did they already pay him? One of the two. Nonetheless, he either has or is getting the bag. Mm-hmm. D-Hop is on a healthy contract right now. Like Cliff Kingsbury ran such a receiver-heavy scheme that I imagine that the next offense, whatever coordinator you bring in, won't be on that such receiver-heavy side of the bell curve, that you might just be comfortable saying, okay, we need to scale back here. We're fine having Hollywood, Rondale Moore, and potentially anyone like a depth free agent signing or some sort of depth draft pick. So you kind of just need to rebalance where your assets are being put forth on the team. I think it's just as simple as that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this team was very bad this year. They're firing their GM. They're firing Cliff Kingsbury. They're starting over essentially. So
did they fire Steve Keim?
He stepped down, glorified fire.
Yeah, okay. They got rid of him.
Yeah, the team's going to go in a whole new direction now. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes.
With that being said, you're correct. Hollywood, it looks like they already picked up his 5th-year option, which is for $13 million. But then after that, he is a unrestricted free agent after next season. So he's going to get the bag. At least that's most likely what's going to happen. You don't trade a first-round pick for a guy and not pay him. And I think, this team, like you guys said, is going in a completely different direction. DeAndre Hopkins was one of the leaders on this team, and he's an older guy, and you can't spend that much money on the receiver room between him and Hollywood Brown. They're going to have to take the younger guy that they just traded a first round pick for. It's just that simple. Mm-hmm. And DeAndre Hopkins
who's the winner from this, though? Like, looking at, before we get into potentially speculating on D-Hop situation, Rondale Moore was a guy that even now, it was like at first Hollywood was playing and then D-Hop came in, and then instantly when D-Hop came in, Hollywood then got hurt. So Rondale Moore was producing, but always in that second receiver role. Now that role could be solidified.
It doesn't.
So, like,
it just doesn't do it for me.
Are you more bullish on Rondo? What about Hollywood? Is now hot? Like, are you more bullish on Hollywood? Because his price is pretty low on keep trade cut right now. With how many targets Hollywood has gotten basically every year, this dude could come back and put up, like, in terms of targets, top 12 in the league pretty easily.
So I do think Hollywood's production will increase next year. I do think he steps into that true wide receiver one role in an offense led by Kyler Murray. So I do think he will take, as long as he's healthy, take a step forward. But that's the thing for me is he's never been healthy. He's had to list Frank. He's had a whole bunch of other things. Like I just stay away from Hollywood because I don't like the injury aspect of him. But when he's on the field, I think he will produce heavily next season.
I don't know. I agree with that. I feel like this offense is being underpriced. We had one bad year. Other than that, you look at the talent across the board. These are all talented players.
I think I would, if I could trade for all those Cardinal skill players, like including Kyler Murray, like I just would. I would pick up basically all of them because I agree. Kyler Murray is like ranked below Tua, I think, on keep trade cut at this point. Like, Hollywood Brown is super deflated as well. Same thing with Rondell Moore. Zach Ertz was like tight end 4 on the year. I know he has the injury, but so like Trey McBride is also very good. I'd buy him too. Like I'm very bullish on the Cardinals. I think Cliff Kingsbury was definitely keeping this team down. And, you know, with this team getting it together, which it might take a while because who knows when Kyler is going to be fully healthy. But I just got to imagine this much talent at some point has to click. And they're going to be the Bengals West. Like this is going to be the Bengals West is what my eventual prediction would be for them. Hey, Sparky.
I just agree with you because I like them all at cost. I'll buy all these guys at cost.
Yeah.
It's fine by me. Like I might not necessarily be going out and like, oh, biggest buy of the offseason, Rondell Moore, but I like him. At that price, I like him, and I'm going to be buying.
So now do you want to play trade machine?
Do D-Hop. Let's do D-Hop. So I agree with you. I feel like the Giants, especially because they like led the league in dead cap this year, so they're going to have cash now, I think, to play around with a little bit. They're going to have some dollar bills in the pocket. Or there's still, you're going to have to correct me on that. But if they do have some dollar bills in the pocket, there's a team that could be going in for D-Hop. I mean, any of the teams that have guys on a rookie contract are instantly in contention. Like teams with rookie contract that are trying to compete are going to be in contention for D-Hop.
So the Bears have the most cap space. Definitely wouldn't be surprised if he got traded there. I'm assuming they're going to move back from either the one or trade Justin Fields. Regardless, they're going to be picking up a lot of
I don't think they're trading Justin Fields.
Whatever happens, they're getting a bunch of pieces. So we could split one way or another. They're going to be getting a lot that they can mess around with, and they already have the most cap space by a lot. So the Bears are definitely
but if you're the D-Hop owner right now, like, are you more optimistic with this move, or are you
going to the Bears
a little bit? I mean, going to the Bears is never like
so
you yearn for as a receiver.
So as a D-Hop manager, right, roster,
yes.
I think these rumors or whatever happens to him really can go either direction. I don't think the trade is necessarily good or bad. I just think he has the potential to end up on the Giants, and everyone's going to hate that, right? No one's going to say that offense is going to support DeAndre Hopkins numbers that you want, and his value is probably going to stay the same because it's already pretty low, and then just slowly tail off. That's just what's going to happen. But now if he gets the big flashy trade, right, he goes to the Packers. He goes to the Chiefs. I'm just throwing out the Chargers. Like you throw all these big landing spots out here, and if you get that
Jets,
maybe. I mean, I think Garrett Wilson is
every single big name receiver that's ever been on the trade market. The Jets are involved in the trade discussions, and they're always the team that just doesn't get them.
Yeah, they don't get them.
True. So like, there is the potential, and I think if the trade happens where he's going to get that bump and see that bump from just the hype, I think that is the very last time you will have an opportunity to trade DeAndre Hopkins. and I think you just have to do it. I just
you're just out.
I'm not out. Again, when he's healthy, he's gonna put up numbers. But at this point, to save the value here, you just have to. It's one of those moves that you hate doing. It looks ugly. You're gonna take a early second for DeAndre Hopkins, and you're gonna hate it. But at the end of the day, you're gonna turn around in the next draft when you have someone sitting there at the early second. You're going to be happy you have it, and you're not going to miss a 33-year-old DeAndre Hopkins at that point. It's just what it is.
What's the one team you absolutely don't want him to go to from a value perspective? Because even with the Giants, you could spin it. Oh, Dable, he really helped revitalize Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, but like when I said going to the Giants, it's just a neutral move. It's not going to bump.
Yeah, what's like a negative move?
I don't know, because at the Giants, negative? You look at their receiver room, and he is easily from a depth chart perspective, which I think is a bait. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, D-Hop's going to obviously lead that team in targets, right? That's going to be
that's the expectation regardless, I think. He's DeAndre Hopkins. Let's not mess around. I know his dynasty value has gone down because he's aged, but, you look at a receiver room, 99% of the time, you're going to be like, DeAndre Hopkins is the guy.
So, the Titans...
What can you trade him for right now? Panthers? What's the price right now?
An early second. That's about it.
I'm not trading a fucking early second for D-Hop.
I'm saying that's the best thing you can possibly get, around there. You're not going to get any better.
Mid-second, right? Let's just say the price is mid-second before this trade, right? Is it worth just selling now, or are you going to play the trade gamble and hope that maybe he goes to just the nutty landing spot? They get rid of Juju, bring in D-Hop, and then all of a sudden it's hell yeah. Then he's worth an early second. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't there obviously are nightmare landing spots. You look at potentially the Raiders rebuilding, and you don't want to go there. You look at even going to Cleveland. I don't hate it. Go play with Deshaun Watson again. Okay, I don't hate that.
You know what uniform he'd look good wearing? The Texans. I'm funny.
Yeah, you trade him for David Johnson in a second.
Yeah.
There's the thing is the only people that are going to really make a move for DeAndre Hopkins are teams that consider themselves contenders, right? No middling team is really going to go out and pick up DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not sure
here. Many people right now are going out and picking up DeAndre Hopkins. That's the problem, is that who's going out here right now and purchasing Hopkins?
Well, I don't think the price is very high in terms of an NFL cost. So, I think there's going to be many suitors in that sense, just because.
No, I'm talking about in Dynasty.
In Dynasty, there's no suitors. That's the problem. So you have to wait for something to happen. Because if you just sit right now, you're going to hate yourself and just take 208 for DeAndre Hopkins, and that's just shit. I'd rather have him die at that point on my roster.
208? So, You wouldn't take 208, is what you're saying?
I don't think I would. I just off rip. I mean, I haven't done my draft research yet, but off rip, I'd say that's just too low for who he is.
How old is he?
30.
Oh, he's only 30? Okay, he's actually younger than I thought. I as a contender, I might take. I might trade 2-8 for him, actually. I thought you said he was 33. I didn't really
No, I'm saying if you get I was saying if you don't trade him this offseason, then you're looking at an offseason where he's 31 going on 32, and people are like, there's no chance I'm trading for that guy. So I'm saying if you don't trade him now, following the release and sign elsewhere or trade to whoever, you're not gonna have a chance to get him off your team again.
Yeah, honestly, I think D-Hop might be a buy. Now that I'm looking at it,
I'm debating what I consider the price of admission to find out if he's washed or not. What I'd be willing to spend, because I tried it with Julio, it didn't really work.
Well, that was when you actually buy a 33-year-old, not just me saying he's 33.
Yeah.
Julio was done, and everyone knew it.
Let me just bring up a name that I think is interesting because they're not necessarily exactly similar players, but in terms of the numbers they produce, Adam Thielen is a guy that he had the name brand value, right? I'm pretty sure he had a wide receiver 1 overall year at some point, or pretty darn close to it. And if you look at the years age 30 to 32, it's not anything spectacular, but in 2020 and 2021, the age 30 and 31 seasons for him, 14 touchdowns and 10 touchdowns with just about 100 targets each season.
Who was this?
Adam Thielen.
Well, that's also different. Like, he didn't really start playing major NFL snaps until he was already like 26, 27. Like, he was old when he broke out.
Try, like, what did AJ Green look like in like 2018?
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's look at that.
AJ Green kind of got washed early, I believe.
2018 AJ Green, he only played 9 games, then got hurt, but he did have 77 targets through those 9 games, which is very high. Look, I mean, for the price of he didn't even play 9 games, really. He played.
The one thing, though, is that I feel like with AJ Green, right, he had a major injury at some point very late in his career, like around 30 years old.
I think it was that 2018 year that I was just looking up.
Julio Jones had, I don't think he had like so many injuries at that point. D-Hop, we saw him just now playing at an elite level. And like, I'm not even sure I would necessarily give up a draft pick to get D-Hop, but in terms of a player that, you know, you look at these 2022 rookie receivers that basically like 8 of them have a current first round pick valuation, which is not going to hold a year from now. A player that you can try to move into to sell on the hype of my young asset and get a guy who has a damn good chance of scoring more points is D-Hop. Because right now, D-Hop is not the flashy asset. No one wants D-Hop, just like Jake was saying earlier. And up until now, I kind of didn't. But pivoting into D-Hop as a contender, selling off the hype of a young player, I would love to do. And I honestly think that D-Hop has a damn good chance, at least one season of like 12 points per game, 12 and a half points per game, which is just around a top 24 finish, is all I need. And that's what I'm looking for. That's all I'm trying to trade for. Anything else is a bonus. You're muted, Jake.
What on top of D-Hop are you looking for young player?
I would not do this in one trade unless I'm selling like a Garrett Wilson or one of the really flashy young receivers where you can basically always get that keep trade cut price, if not more. I would be offering out these young receivers for a first, or maybe depending on who the young receiver is, obviously. Sometimes you may have to give like the young receiver in a third. Sometimes maybe with a guy like Pickens, you can get a 25 first and a 25 second if someone really likes Pickens. I would be doing that and then separately trading my second round pick, my mid to late second round pick for D-Hop. That's how I would operate it.
Gotcha.
And I might just be doing that now if I can. Because, dude, you know what? I might sign up for the trade lottery. I want in. I want in on the trade lottery. I'm purchasing my chips. I'm going down to the casino, and I'm pulling down the slot machine. Let's see what happens, baby. Chiefs Nation, let's ride.
Chiefs Nation.
Broncos country, let's ride.
Meanwhile, just on Russ, he actually was good after they fired Hackett, but we're not ready for that conversation.
Different segment. We'll wait till Lounis gets back because Lounis will have some hilarious shit to say. All right. Unsurprisingly, Brandin Cooks tells the Texans he wants to be traded.
Again?
Because clearly he doesn't want to be in the rebuild where the rebuild doesn't even want to get the first round pick to guarantee that they get the best quarterback. He's like, dude, fuck this. I'm outie.
I feel like this has happened to the Texans like 3 times in the past 5 years. Like they just blow their like chance at the first pick all the time.
I think Lovie Smith did that to spite them because he knew he was going to get canned. So he's just like, listen, guys, all of us are not having a job here next year. Let's go and fuck them. Like,
not wrong.
I think that's exactly what happened. Does this actually happen though? Because the Texans have seemed very. He asked for a trade earlier. Obviously, he only wants to go to a contender. Is he just going to be pitch and hold on the Texans?
It could end up being a trade with the. I don't know why they would do this, but it is the Texans, so like, everything with a grain of salt. Like, imagine them just moving out of the number 2 pick this year too, just trading back. Like, hey, they don't think CJ Stroud is that guy, or whoever the quarterback that falls to 2 is. They don't think he's that guy. They're willing to trade back with, like, I don't know, the Colts, the Falcons. There's a whole litany of teams that probably are willing to trade up to get to that number 2 spot. And they just, include Brandin Cooks in that package. So now whoever this young quarterback is getting this veteran good wide receiver on top of, I could see that happening.
There's no way any team's going to be like, yeah, just give me the Brandin Cooks salary too, just for shits and gigs. Like, there's no way.
You're picking up a quarterback on a rookie contract. Like, right there, you're already saving a bunch of money.
The thing that I find interesting about Brandin Cooks, though, is that because he didn't get traded this year during this season, I don't think that there's this whole, the price on Brandin Cooks is going to increase because, now we know he's not going to be on the Texans, right? Because we saw him already not trade him, I feel like the general consensus is, it's not guaranteed that I already just asked, like, do we think? And no one was instantly 100% he's gone. Once again, Brandin Cooks, I think, is another great piece to potentially move into, simply because this is easily the cheapest you are ever going to be able to get have been able to get Brandin Cooks. Every other season, he's been basically multiple seconds, and now he's worth that probably just singular late second?
Maybe not
if
even.
That?
Yeah.
Maybe not even.
So once again, I just think right now in the market, you could get him. It's not guaranteed. Same thing with D-Hop. It's not guaranteed that you're going to get them for these cheap prices, but it's probably worth, especially if you're someone like me who's interested in selling out on these younger players in your team for more draft picks, right? These are the types of players at this point in time. This is the time to get them. This is the time to get them super cheap.
Yeah, I don't know. He is someone that I do think actually is pretty underpriced because, you look at it as like basically every year except this year where he was injured. And, you consider all the concussions that he had in previous years. Like, he is just a very consistent, 1,000+ yard receiver.
He's only 29 years old, too.
Yeah, you're getting, if healthy, which he has actually surprisingly stayed healthy a decent amount, you're getting wide receiver 2 numbers out of Brandin Cooks. And for the price of maybe a third, probably a late second, I'm in on Brandin Cooks.
But if you're giving up the second, you might be able to get Brandin Cooks and a fourth, right? Maybe even Brandin Cooks and a third if it's a better second, right? There's ways to where you can make the trade even more beneficial. And that's why I like trying to sell one of these younger players so you can pick up, do you think you can trade Pickens for a random 24-25 first and a random 24-25 second?
First and a second? I don't know, because you're probably talking to someone who's lower on Pickens than most. You could probably do a 25 first and second. I don't know about 24.
If you mass offered it, I'm curious because that's part of the reason I like doing that trade is because you can just, okay, I'll trade for the first and a second. I'll trade one of my more current seconds that are a little bit more valuable now for points for the next season while that second round pick kind of matures. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I've kind of hammered that point home enough. Brandin Cooks, I just think is once again another good veteran player. If you can get him at that cost, it's probably worth it. And honestly, like you said, it might be even more worth than D-Hop at cost because he's cheaper than D-Hop. I just don't know how
cheaper, younger. There's a lot going in Brandin Cooks' favor. Yeah, I'm more apt to trade for Brandin Cooks.
He doesn't have the upside of D-Hop, but But the purpose of the trade is not to trade for the best receiver of all time. The purpose is to get a guy with a realistic shot at like a top 30 finish for pretty cheap. That's why I would be trading for Brandin Cooks.
Agreed.
Speaking of trading, interesting segment. I stole this from the Dynasty subreddit, so if you saw this on the Dynasty subreddit, don't sue me. But I thought it was a good segment, and we have touched on this topic before. Basically, just trading strategies. The title, the post was titled, "What are some little nuances that help with trading?" And I kind of wanted to rehash at the end of this year if we have anything new. I for sure have some newer strategies that I've either had before and now have more information on or whatever. I'll let one of you guys take it if you have
one. I know I've talked about it before, but I've decided that I enjoy doing the hero RB, where I just have one good running back and a bunch of other value pieces, whether that's James Conner, whether that's Jeff Wilson, whether that's Cordero Patterson is another good one. There's a bunch of them that are just, they put up points. They're not flashy. No one really wants them. You can pick them up cheap. But at the end of the day, they're going to be a top 24 running back, and you can plug and play them with the matchups, and you can make it work. And especially if you have the likes of Breece Hall or Jonathan Taylor or one of these other top backs to be your hero running back, you can get away with it really well. And it allows you to basically, if you have two good running backs, to trade one off into a more stable asset, because we all know running backs are not a stable asset. Their shelf life is generally very short. And you can transition him into, maybe you throw a little and you pick up one of these young receivers that you like, or you pick up just a younger receiver. You pick up a Deontay Johnson type where he's that 27 age and he's stepping into that prime. Like, there's a bunch of ways to do it, and it allows allows my roster to have more flexibility because it's less short term, just because the other positions tend to last longer than these running backs do.
Well, it was an interesting twist. I wasn't expecting that. So I guess you're just thinking that, like,
I know I sent you a trade that I did in one of my leagues where I traded Joe Mixon straight up for Chris Olave. That's just a move that I straight up like. I know that Chris Olave obviously is valued higher on Keep Trade Cut right now, but like, I think that's a realistic move just because there is a running back tax. Like, people don't want to admit it, but these top running backs, these ones that are going to get minimum 15 touches a game, they're hard to come by at this point in the NFL with all the running backs by committees nowadays. So, like, you can get a little extra. And even if I had to, I would have been willing to throw a third or a couple thirds on top of Mixon here if the guy really fought it. But I just think it was a move that gives me a lot of flexibility moving forward. Anyone will trade for Chris Olave. Only a couple teams will trade for Joe Mixon.
I think that depends on half-point PPR or standard versus full-point PPR. Because to me, Chris Olave full-point PPR for Mixon is just a dumb trade. I don't know why someone would want to do that.
So,
just my point is, realistically, it doesn't pigeonhole my roster because more people will be open to trading for a 23-year-old wide receiver than a 27-year-old running back. It's just the facts of it. It gives me more trade flexibility. It gives my roster more longevity. And on top of that, you're still getting the production, like I said, from those veteran running backs that still put up points.
All right, sticking with the nuances. One that I have is you gotta get creative. I mean, looking through all of my trades that I've done in the past years, that's what I was just doing. Very, very, very rarely is it a 1-for-1 straight up. Looking at what the other person has, what they might need, what kind of backup they might want to help shore up their position. Like, maybe they just have Dallas Goedert at tight end, and they could use just this little extra boost at tight end. So you have, I don't know, in recent years I'm thinking like Jared Cook, or just those random kind of tight ends that give you some kind of points and some assurance. that will help boost your side of the deal a little bit to get what you truly want. Yeah, Jake, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say you could even go, especially with the tight end position, just throw in the late round rookie pick that had, showed a few flashes, and now people are a little interested. I'm thinking, Bellinger is a name that comes to mind. Okongwu with the Titans is a name to come to mind. That just guys that didn't cost you much to pick up, and if you can sweeten a deal with those kind of guys, realistically, there's very minimal downside that those guys become a top end player at the position.
Then another nuance I'm thinking of, and one that I've more recently tried to subscribe to, is, and in a lot of leagues, if you're going to trade away your first round pick in years future, like if you're going to trade away your 2024 pick, like you'll have to buy in now. And that's not really what I'm like concerned about. It's more the value of those picks, right? Like right now, I'm not going to trade a 2025 first, because I just know from today to 100 days from today to a year from today, it's just going to keep increasing in value. So trading it now to try and get the win now piece, it feels like almost always a value loss. And I get that you're trying to go and you're trying to win championships, but there's better ways to do it than trading away those first 2 years from now, 3 years from now.
Completely agree. For the most part,
there's a time and a place, right? If you're this close and you're getting a guy that is a first round caliber asset, like it's worth it. Like if you can, because at the end of the day, what are you playing for? You're playing for the championship. So like,
sure,
to be afraid to trade that when you're a piece away, I just think is the wrong way to look at it. Obviously, you have to get good value. I'm not saying just panic sell your first round pick to get whatever asset you think is going to put you over the top, unless it truly puts you over the top.
I'm going to put you on the spot right here, but like, who's a guy like right now, or 3 weeks ago, or a month ago, you would have traded a 2025 first for?
I'll give you the example of the problem that I have. I don't think you're going to get him for a single first though. But here's a good example of why I agree with JT. Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, come the second half of the season, was really hot, producing I think he was putting up top 12 receiver numbers. Great player, right? And if you trade your first straight up for him 1-for-1, I don't really think it's the worst trade in the world.
Right, but that's my point.
The problem I have is that if you are not receiving one of these players that has the ability to put up 1.5 to 2 standard deviations points above average, then it's not worth it in the long run. And I agree with JT. Okay, yeah, if you're getting a guy like Kelsey, especially in retrospect, where he's going to outscore everyone in his position, or you're trading for a guy like a Saquon or a CMC, where they're legitimately popping off and players that are carrying you to championships. Okay, fine. I don't mind trading my first for those types of players. It's the trading my first, especially in these 1-for-1 deals, for a guy who's a glorified wide receiver too, when we just mentioned 2 guys that have a really good chance, they're not as flashy, to put up a wide receiver 2 season that you don't need to trade a first round pick for.
That I agree with. I'm saying, my point is they have to be worth that first round pick. I'm not just trading for Terry McLaurin.
Travis Kelce is probably the exception to the rule. Like Travis Kelce is he's just a cheat code.
Well, Derrick Henry might have been another type. I mean, this sucks with the injuries, but there are a lot of Terry McLaurin. It has been worth a first on keep trade cut. For the most part, he's teetered above and beyond.
But there are other ways I would rather go about trading for Terry McLaurin than that first round pick.
Exactly, I agree. That's why I agree with you. Is that trading these far out first round picks that are hard to value, they're going to go up. It's more times going to backfire than it's going to be amazing.
You're working through this one.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just I don't like trading my first. I don't think it's something people should do. I think people honestly do it too freely. If we're being just straight up here, I think people don't.
They don't.
Well, not anymore.
Every other league they do.
They used to, and then they realized, oh shit, I can get all these good players in the draft. Like if I just am patient, I actually get a better player in the draft than whatever I'm trading for. So like there's a lot to it, but like I'm not saying don't go out and make the move to win a championship, because I mean obviously there's a time and a place, but you gotta be able to fill it out, and you gotta be able to know what's wrong, what's wrong here. Like obviously if you're trading for Terry McLaurin, who's like Frank said, basically a glorified wide receiver 2, his story, that's not worth it. It's like if you're getting a guy that's older but puts up points, it might be worth it. Or if you're getting a super young guy, then it might be worth it as well. But like to me, there's just a quality of player I expect when I trade one of my first round picks. That's basically.
Good for you playing through the contact there on that one and finishing out the play.
Where's the leaf? Where is the leaf?
All right, yeah, fair, I guess. We could just go in circles on this one, though, about the value of the first and when you're willing to trade, when you're not willing to trade it. That's just kind of one of the nuances that I've started to subscribe more to. I find it's tough because you really, like, you see a player you like, and it's just so much easier to just give up that first and try and negotiate a deal around, you know, this player and this player for that, or make one move to then make that move kind of thing. But I don't know, in the long run, I always feel like
you're right. And in trading a first is almost a move of laziness a lot of times. Where it's you're like, you know, the guy will do it for my first, but he doesn't like anybody else on my roster, so I'm just going to do it and not try to pick up a player that he wants instead for cheaper or something. Like it's just an easy move, basically. Is here, take a first, because everyone will take it, and value typically only goes up.
Well, this is not a nuance, but this is more of a, I'm just gonna pull the room and try and get advice here. What I've run into, and champagne problems kind of, is a lot of teams I have, like, there are just a lot of players that I like on my team. Obviously, I went out and traded them, I drafted them. Like, I don't want to move them theoretically, but you know, if you're a team that's kind of stuck in the middle, or you know, you're a fringe competitor kind of thing, like you're gonna have to make trades to make your team better. So how do you get past that kind of trading the players that you like?
I have an easy answer for you. You have to determine a realistic difference between your perceived value of the player and the market price to something that, now a lot of people struggle with this, within reason can be accepted, and mass offer that player out for that price. And if you can't get the price that you want, then you don't trade them. And if you can, then obviously you've now traded them, because you're right. You can't be stuck in purgatory. You need to make moves. And I mean, if you can get an overpay, you can get an overpay. The problem is that, and this is mainly when I talk to Parker, one of our friends, right, who constantly calls me about fantasy advice, is that the price that he wants for every player is just the smidge above reason. It's the, Cam Akers, I want to trade away Cam Akers, I'll mass offer him for a first round pick, which is just not an offer that anyone really wants to do without, and that's an overpay. That's an overpay. If you see that in your league, you think to yourself, well, that's a fucking dumb trade. Like, it just is. And you can't send out those types of offers. You have to be actually realistic and use some of my potential nuanced strategies. Am I allowed to go into them, or do you guys want to add to that really quick?
No, I like this transition here.
Okay. I mean, I'm going to really hash over some of the comment merchant strats that I do that I think are very successful. The first being mass offering, like I kind of just alluded to. You got to mass offer. It's a great strategy to maximize your leverage in deals. 100%, it's great.
We moved Marquez Valdes-Scantling for a second at the beginning of the year.
Well, it's twofold positive, because not only do you get deals like literally you just use keep, trade, cut. And when Marquez Valdes-Scantling, a player like that, moves above a draft pick, you're like, well, that's dumb. Okay, well, let me offer it for every second round pick in existence, mainly the future ones, because they're easy to get. Okay, well, if he's really worth a second round pick, it'll happen. But the other thing too, though, that's happened to me, I've gotten counter offers that are really favorable for me that I would have never expected to get. And that, if you're wondering in your leagues, how do people get some of these ridiculous trade offers? that's usually it, is when you offer out a deal and they counter something that they obviously think is good for them, but in reality is just not in line with what the market suggests in most leagues. And that's how you get those type of, okay, I'm going to break my phone with my finger smashing the accept button. So yeah, other than mass offering, one that I've used this year that I'm going to keep using, especially as I join more random leagues where I really don't know anyone. And I'm in once you hit double digit leagues, it's just starts to become a little fucking crazy. You have to look at past trades of people and see, and it's not even necessarily pulling up their trade log or anything. It's a lot of times okay, who's the guy who hoards the young players? Who's the guy who trades all his shit for the young players, right? Who's the guy who will trade his future first for the running backs or the old players? Who's the guy that clearly is hoarding all the quarterbacks, right? And you just give him that shit that he clearly wants because he's built his team around it. This is especially important in the beginning leagues of startups, right? If once you see the one dude trading away his draft picks, you got to be like a fucking shark, because once he starts trading away a few picks, they're all going to be going at cost. So you got to be ready to swoop in, because getting future picks at cost, like we kind of said, is for the most part a good move, especially in a startup draft where it's you don't even have to pick a specific player. So yeah, that's one that I've definitely been using, especially for the picks, right? Because they're hard to get in a lot of leagues, these high valued picks. So you gotta get on it quick. This is one that people need to fucking do, and it kind of goes back to just mass offering, but you gotta shop your trades. When you are getting interest in one of your players, right? Someone comes to me and wants Mahomes. If someone's coming to me, I'm gonna try to get an offer out of them. Right? If they come and text me, oh, what do you want from Mahomes? I'm just going to say, what's your offer, right? You're coming to me. Once I get the offer, I'm not going to go message other people. Oh, I got 2 firsts to mix in for Mahomes. Do you want to beat that or no? No, you just send mass offer out trades at that value or more for shit you would rather have. Right? This is not rocket science. And to me, this is not an unethical trade strategy where you're marketing out someone's offer. No, someone set the market price. I'm just going to see for every other team in the league if I can get a smidge more. And I've gotten trades accepted like that, where someone has come, asked me for a player, and I was able to get an extra third on the offer or whatever I thought the value of their offer was. That's creating value out of thin air. You have to do it. You should. Yeah, that's really it for me.
I think building off that, Mahomes is an easy example because everyone's going to kind of want to trade for Mahomes. But I think if you have those random kind of players, I'm trying to think of Devontae Parker might be too poor. I don't know, someone give me just a random player. Think of a random player.
Tyler Lockett.
Okay, perfect. Tyler Lockett. I think if someone's offering you a second for Tyler Lockett, you could go around the league and try and trade Tyler Lockett for a second and a third kind of thing. And I think that's more of an easy, quick way. Because with Mahomes, I think you're going to find yourself locked into long, drawn-out negotiations. Yeah, you're going to have...
That's fair.
I mean, it's all what definitely don't just trade Mahomes to the first person that comes to you. But I think it's much more. To me, it's just a rule.
If someone gives me a trade, I am going to try and trade that player to other players at the same time, because to me that maximizes my leverage, which is important. Especially if it's a shittier level player and I'm getting an offer that I don't really love. Okay, I might send a counter to that guy, and then I'm going to just mass offer him out at a similar price. This is something that it's not necessarily advice or anything, but I kind of just want to talk about it really quickly. What do you do in the scenarios where your perceived value of a player or maybe even a draft pick is just wildly higher than the markets or lower? How do you attack that scenario?
I mean, if your value is lower, you either if you have them, trade them for whatever the market price is, because then you're making out. Or B, if you don't have them, you don't trade for them. It's very easy. But if you have a guy that your value is over, right? I guess you then A, trade for him because you're going to pay less than what you think he's worth, and that's fine. Or B, if you have him, you basically can't trade him. It gets to this point where you just can't trade him, because anyone that comes to you looking for anything is going to offer you the market price, maybe slightly above market price, and you're just going to say, nope, I think he's worth more. Like, that's just what it is. It's basically you've created an emotional attachment to your players for some reason, and you just don't want to, whether that's valid or not. I just think people in leagues are gonna have their guys, and if they have them, good luck getting them from them. It's just not going to be possible.
Yeah, I mean, like, all right, yeah. Based on that, I mean, to put it into an easy like example, I always thought Gabe Davis was valued way higher than what I valued him at, so I just didn't move on from it. Like, I didn't move for him, and then Rashad Bateman, I valued a lot higher than the market. And this is where I think you have to be willing to pivot. Like, Rashad Bateman, I valued a lot higher than the market, and either A, it works out and, you know, you're like, cool, look at what I just did. I had Rashad Bateman, I didn't move on from him, and now he's really good. Or B, you see, like, you know, he's not getting the snaps that he should be getting. He's not getting targeted like he should be getting. And then you have to be willing to, you know, change your tune on him and not get yourself stuck in take lock, which, I mean, there are definitely players I have gone, Terrace Marshall, for example.
Oh, everyone does it. Everyone gets
getting yourself stuck in take lock. So the ability to pivot is something that I don't necessarily have a strong grasp on, but it's something that I recognize is very essential if you're
okay. Well, I want to touch specifically on, because Jake was kind of just like, okay, if you like a guy a lot more than the market, just go get him or trade for him. But like, specifically, let's say I have to overpay, I can't get him at just the keep trade cut price or whatever the market price may be. How much do you just always overpay because you're like, oh well, my perceived value is just higher, so now I have to overpay? Maybe I'll take him around earlier in my startup draft. Do you just say, fuck it, I'll just take the next available option? Like, because I agree with JT in that, okay, yeah, if it works out for you and you overpaid for a player and his price went through the moon, yeah, it's great, you look like a genius. But if it goes the other way, not only did your player go down in value, you lost significant value because you overpaid at the time to get them, right? So you have to factor that into the total loss of the value of the player as well.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, like, an example of this is someone that I still to this day will always overpay for market for is Kyle Pitts. Like, I just think, like, if he does end up hitting, I'm just reaping the benefits of Kyle Pitts. It's just, you know, whatever. We've talked about Kyle Pitts enough. I think he's the rare exception to the rule, because I think there are a lot of other players where it's not nearly as influential, or what you think they're going to end up becoming is not nearly as realistic as you might expect. And specifically, I'm thinking wide receivers and running backs as like the main two position groups where you're like, oh, this guy's like primed to break out. He's going to be a beast. And he just doesn't. Now, CeeDee Lamb actually was like a wide receiver, like I think 6 overall in the year, 5. He was very high, but the price that he was at the beginning of the year and for, you know, years prior, it was basically you need him to hit at that price. He need to be that kind of like top 3 wide receiver for him to be worth what you're trading for CeeDee Lamb. So in those scenarios with trading, that's where you kind of got to temper your expectations. That's where you got to be like, hey, I really like this guy. I like him above market. I think he's really great. But like, if he actually hits and I spend all this above market, I'm kind of just breaking even. Like, it's not worth it. And it's tough because you see these players and you're like, I know this guy's good. I know AJ Brown's good. I know Justin Herbert is good. But how much does that truly help your dynasty team? You know, like, how many more points is CeeDee Lamb giving you than, I don't know, Amon-Ra, than, I guess, Chris Olave from this year? Like you're not getting like a ton more points, and you're paying such a premium that's almost always not worth it. So that's kind of where you got. It's a rule that I don't necessarily follow, but you do have to kind of just take that step back and put yourself in perspective and be like, and what I do, like, is what I'm doing right now doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. And it's hard because you just, there's a lot of passion involved. These are the guys that you're seeing making, you know, crazy plays on Sundays. And it's hard to just take that step back and be like, the value is not worth it. It is not a smart play to make this.
Yeah, it's just it's really interesting because I feel like this phenomena happens every time in startups where when you're preparing for them, you're looking at the ADP and whatnot, and you're making all these plans of where I want to trade into and what players I value and what rounds I value more than consensus. But then when it actually comes time to make these moves, especially when there's a time factor involved where you don't have like weeks to be able to just consistently send out trades, it's tough to maneuver around and try to extract the most value, especially in these drafts, right? That's where it's really hard, is that in these drafts, like, you know, I might really like a player at 109, right? But in these first rounds, it'll be tough to move around. And then you don't know where the player is going to go. So like I feel like I've always really that's been one area I've really struggled in Dynasty, is trying to maneuver around these draft boards with trades. And sometimes I feel like it's partly because I'm too stuck to what I think is fair or the market value for some of these trades. Like, I'm not willing to sell low going from 103 to 105 and pick up like anything, or maybe it's just hard to pick up anything because there's no tier break there. So the guy at 105 is kind of chilling, taking whoever he can get. So you're in those scenarios where it's like you can basically get nothing. So it is even worth trading back. Like those are some really hard scenarios in these drafts to try and extract the most value.
Well, especially if you're at like that 112, 201 turn kind of thing, not necessarily right in those rounds, but I don't know, put you in like the 7th, 8th round kind of thing, where it's like, is this player going to last on the board for another 23 picks? Like, do I have confidence that I can make a trade and get that player, you know, later kind of thing? So you end up taking, I'm not going to even throw out an example because I can't think of one, but you end up taking a player like 20 picks above their ADP. I did this
with Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, you take a player 20 picks
I was taking him a round above his ADP basically all offseason.
Yeah.
Not in rookie drafts and startup drafts, right? And I mean, it, for the most part, has worked out. Like, I don't think his value's necessarily gone down. It's not like he's gone to the moon or anything, but when it doesn't work, it's mainly when it doesn't work out that sucks. Because, I mean, listen, I was the Zach Wilson guy. I got burned in about a quarter of my leagues, completely overpaying for a dude that's not even going to be a starting quarterback now, it looks like.
Yeah, what from Grace?
Too bad. And yeah, part of the mistake is take lock and not selling them when you should, when they're trending down, and just saying like, fuck it, I'll sell at the loss instead of praying that this guy turns his career around. But at the same time, I probably could have invested in those shares at less of a premium at the time.
You guys want to talk rookies now?
We can talk more. I don't know. Maybe we can come up with more concrete scenarios for that segment. Something I've always wanted to touch on is especially maneuvering around these draft boards, trying to extract as much value as possible. Yeah, we can get into the rookies here. We're going to continue off last week into rookie buy sell holds, 2022 rookie, not 2023. We were going to do a mock draft, but you can blame Lounis for not showing up. So thanks, Lounis.
Chat, Lounis.
So I think Jahan Dotson is currently the highest valued player. No, Jameson Williams is currently the highest valued player
Lunis
that
isn't even here for Jameson
we have
Williams.
left off. Yeah, thank God, because we already heard Lunis's take. He's going to give he won't give 2 firsts, but he'll give a first and 2 seconds for Jameson Williams.
The GM today just said we haven't seen nearly what he's capable of or something along those lines.
Great. Who cares?
Yeah, Jameson Williams. I like Jameson Williams. I don't have anything against him, but wide receiver 17 price, which you basically have to pay the same price as Drake London to get him, because wide receiver 17, these Lounis out here that have him, all are nuts, right? They're like, oh, you want to get my Jameson Williams? You better give me Mahomes and then some. Like,
I just feel like Jameson Williams is one of these very polarizing prospects where you either love him or just don't care for him. Like, no one's just middle of the road on this guy. I think that's just because he's like one of these speed demon kind of guys.
Yeah, that's where I have the issue. It's like Deshaun Jackson, Will Fuller, Tyreek Hill. Like, other than those three, like, where are you really getting like
John Ross?
Exactly. And it's just like
Darius Hayward-Bay.
like there's just the mold of Jameson Williams has been like it's been decent for NFL teams, but not very good for fantasy. So I'm definitely not paying wide receiver 17 prices. He's an easy sell for me.
Easy sell.
We haven't seen much from him with the torn ACL, but I truly think it is just going to be a lot of just running up and down the field for Jameson Williams. Not necessarily with the ball in his hands, just up and down. Anything else you guys want to add on Jameson?
Dude, I think I like Jameson Williams as a receiver more than you guys, but
yeah, it's not.
Man, I just have to put the sell tag on him, because I think realistically, with the risk that he has associated with him, because the GM, all the Jameson Williams people are going to be like, this is great. Look at the GM. He loves him. It's like, dude, what are you going to say? The guy that did they trade up for him too? Like,
yeah.
Okay, well, if he's bad, then it's like, yeah, then you're the one that messed up, right? Like, so obviously you're personally invested on this guy's success. You're not going to be like, oh yeah, well, Jameson Williams really sucked this year. Like,
look, I'm not going to put any knocks on him for this year, because it was just like an ACL tear. Like, we know it takes a little bit to come back from the ACL tear too. So like, once you're back, it takes a little while to come back fully. So I'm not going to knock him for this year, but just like as a prospect and who he is as a player is where I've been like already kind of out on Jameson Williams at the price, at wide receiver 17 price specifically.
Right. All right, let's get into a more realistic price. Jahan Dotson, still a pretty hefty price tag right now at wide receiver 28. And he is currently on Keep Trade Cut above the 2024 late first round pick. I think all things considered, it's a fair price, but once again, because these rookies, everyone seems to fucking love them. I feel like, as someone that has Dotson in a ton of leagues, I feel like I have to try my hand at selling for a future first plus, like a future first and a third.
Yeah.
Whatever, right? Like, so I guess that means he's more of a sell then.
I would move off Jahan Dotson for any first. Anything lower than that, probably not. And I'm not really that big on Jahan Dotson, but I just think from a value play, you probably can get a first from someone for Jahan. And at that price, I'm selling.
I'm in the same boat. I'm going to take the reroll on him, just getting him at basically cost, whatever. You probably took him around 111, 112. If I could take that again this year, I will. Anything less than that, I think, like JT, it starts to be just like a hold situation. But overall, I think if you can get a reroll on Jahan Dotson, I would. I like the player, but I just think this draft is better, and you're going to get a higher caliber of prospect at that spot here.
Well, if I can get a 1 and a 3, which is dreaming a little bit to me, but whatever, right? I'll see what I can do, or maybe even just a future random first. To me, Dotson, while I took him at the end of first in leagues, that was primarily because of just no quarterbacks going in this draft class. Most super flex drafts are going to have at least 2 quarterbacks go in the first round, if not more. And this year you only had one, who is Kenny Pickett, who a lot of times was like in the late first. So he wasn't even one of these sought after quarterbacks. A lot of time it was just the QB needy team, wherever they fell in the middle to end of the draft, decided to just take the shot on Pickett because they needed a quarterback. Dotson, I don't know, because he was a first round pick, but I would have loved getting him in the second. First round valuation is tough, man. That is a hefty price tag to have.
Yeah, I think how I feel about Jahan Dotson is he seems like he's a good receiver, but I feel pretty confident that he's not going to be an elite receiver. So yeah, to sum it up again, I kind of just will take that reroll and see if I can get that elite receiver.
Like the question I'm asking with him is, like, is he gonna outscore? Is he going to be like a top 24 receiver, right? And outscore the Brandin Cookses of the world and outscore the, maybe not necessarily D-Hop because he's probably a higher end veteran, but Brandin Cooks is a good barometer. Tyler Lockett, right? These types of players. Is he going to, what are the chances? How about that? Not is he or is he not? What, does he have a realistic chance of outscoring these types of players?
I mean, who's to say who the Commanders quarterback will be? But, just saying it's your random run-of-the-mill QB, I'd say it's more likely than not he outscores those kind of players, but not like a smash he will. I'd give it like 60-40, maybe 65-35 that he will. Because, I mean, when he was healthy this year, he definitely was scoring points. Now, touchdown regression is going to come back to bite him because he had like 7 touchdowns in his very limited games. Maybe even more than that. But yeah, I'd put it at more likely than not he would outscore the likes of a Tyler Lockett next year.
I think the one thing that's tough with Dotson is that, and you can ask Commanders fans this, he just passes the eye test with flying colors. He's the type of guy that when you watch his routes, he really does well against man coverage. So when you look at, like, that's been a popular stat recently, especially with a lot of the PFF data analyst guys, that success against man coverage, like PFF grade against man coverage or whatever it is, the barometer they use against man coverage, has been relatively predictive for, like, are you not terrible at playing receiver in the NFL? And not only with the eye test, but the numbers do kind of back it up. And with the games that he's played healthy, he has put up points. So he is really a tough evaluation. I think all things considered, for me, wide receiver 28 is pretty fair.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's a smash sell, but I definitely lean more sell than hold, I guess is how I describe it.
All right, the next guy, I imagine we can get through pretty quickly, but I think part of this is because the keep trade cut price, I think, is just not...
Doesn't seem right.
I don't understand it because I have not seen the... Dameon Pierce is apparently still worth a future first-round pick. I really struggle to see who really wants to trade a first-round pick for Dameon Pierce right
now. Yeah, not me. Like, easy sell. I will sell Dameon Pierce for any first. Any year, any position, just give me the first.
I'll probably take an early second. Just say thanks. Roll again.
Really? I don't think you have to.
Is that, like, if we were to put Dameon Pierce in this draft class terms, like, I think he falls in the early second in terms of realistic value.
Definitely.
So if we let's not keep trade cuts price. Let's say he's worth an early second, right? Let's be a little bit more reasonable. Now, does that change anything?
I still don't want him. That's why I said I'd sell for that price. I just don't want him.
It's definitely more fair, though, because then he's right around Rachaad White, James Cook, Brian. He's literally in a tier of players. Rachaad White, James Cook, Brian Robinson, Allgeier, Pacheco. I think that's where he belongs.
I can make it easy for you guys. I'm going to be selling all of them.
All right, well, let's go down the list then. Let's just bang them out. Rachaad White, early second-round pick. Yeah, I'm selling him too. I just, to me, this Bucs team is going to be horrible, largely overhauled. And I think other than Cade Otton, simply because his price is so low and tight ends do take a while to develop, like, I can envision a world where he's just a guy that sticks around and could have like low end tight end 1, tight end 2 level production.
Maybe. Does it matter? No.
But like the other guys, it's dude, if Brady's gone, man, like
this team is going to look a lot different, and it's just I just think this team is going to look a lot different. I don't know if they'd be interested in like the Jimmy G, Derek Carr group of guys that are going to be available this offseason. But if they have to get a quarterback that's passable, because right now they won't have another one on the roster that's a starter caliber quarterback. So if that's the case, then they're just gonna, if they can't get one, they're gonna go into a full rebuild here, and all those guys are gonna be worth nothing, in my opinion.
What I'm scared of is like the full rebuild scenario is ultimately what I'm scared of. But also, like you said, if they decide to go after the Jimmy G type, well, dude, if they're like a meddling offense with Brady, I'm sorry, but I really am not. I don't think Jimmy G is going to be able to go in there and then,
be better than Brady.
Yeah, be better. Like, yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't. And it's not that I'm like, for Godwin and Mike Evans, I don't care about this scenario, because to me, Godwin, if he sticks around, will probably put up similar numbers no matter what quarterback he has. And Evans, similar-ish scenario, or they leave. Like, okay, those guys, it's fine. But the young players, then, I just want to overhaul the roster. But then Fournette leaving, though, could open up a door. I guess that's what's priced into Rachaad White, is that if Fournette leaves,
so
then he's
high. It's just
it's
he's running back 20. He's I just don't buy that.
Yeah, to you.
I just don't buy that.
All right, next guy.
I just don't think he's good enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
James Cook.
Yeah, sell.
Yeah, I agree. This is an easy sell for me.
Buffalo seems like a team that is going to pick up a running back somewhere.
They always want to. I mean, they picked up Nyheim Hines. Like, that tells you.
Well, that's my point. Is they picked up Hines to be a depth piece and a punt returner, and now they're actually going to pick up a running back in the offseason. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy, but I wouldn't be surprised to see like Kareem Hunt go to Buffalo. I think that's a nice landing spot for them. I think they can come to some kind of deal there. But
if I'm Buffalo, I'm going to continue budget buying running backs.
Right, and that's why I brought up Kareem Hunt, because I don't think his free agent price right now is through the roof after what he did this year.
Exactly. So. I think the Bills, to me, are one of these teams completely bought into, we are not going to pay premiums on running backs. We're not going to give these guys massive free agent deals and things of that nature. So James Cook is probably just stuck as a committee back no matter what. And for an early second round valuation feels pretty expensive for a committee level back.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Robinson. I mean, I'm just going to get out of the way. I like Brian Robinson a lot. And I would, his price is heavy, but I think I would actually pay it.
No. I'm a sell. It feels like AJ Dillon again. That's who I'd probably comp him to in terms of like price versus actual points that are going to be scored. I think AJ Dillon is probably the most comparable, and at the price of, is he still also an early second? Like roughly,
yeah, he's around there. Yeah.
Yeah. Just
in terms of cut price, he's a tier lower than Pierce and White, but still in that early second-ish range. Maybe probably more towards mid-second. What are you gonna say, Jake?
He's like, to me, I'm just going to transition out of Brian Robinson. You can get probably a third on top of Kamara for Brian Robinson right now. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
I don't know if that's how true that actually is, but yeah, the fact that it's possible. Just,
I mean, Brian Robinson is running back 26 on Keep Trade Cut. Alvin Kamara is running back 27. So right now they're pretty much right next to each other there. And just the fact that Robinson is even over him is nuts to me. I would take Kamara 10 times out of 10, even with the age disparity here.
Tyler Allgeier, low-key 1,000-yard season.
Yeah, I mean,
1,000 yards. Wait, what?
Cordero Patterson was on IR and missed like 5 or so weeks, so he definitely got a decent amount there. Yeah, right. It is very surprising. All that being said, still selling.
Yeah, I think that this is a glorified Gus Edwards scenario, where the Falcons probably go and add a back within the next 2 years that kind of is like the more alpha back in a committee backfield.
But
he's not. Listen, Allgeier really improved. I mean, I shat on him during the draft process, and he's definitely proved me wrong. So
hey, he's the best running back prospect of all time. The model said so.
Right. And then Isaiah Pacheco. I think we're all just going to say the same thing. So realistically speaking, we looked at running backs in this like mid-third round to mid-late fourth round-ish range of NFL draft running backs. And historically speaking, only about 20 to 25% of them pan out. But when they pan out, they do have the ability to like really pop off, right? And then we didn't even include like Ramondre Stevenson, guys like the very recent guys that have really panned out. So with that being said, one of these running backs will, or maybe even two, will be that Ramondre Stevenson type player. Will via just opportunity, right? With Damian Harris going down for Stevenson this year or whatever, or maybe via talent, like a guy like Tony Pollard kind of just after a couple years shining through and finally getting his opportunity. So you can almost just pick your poison on which one of these guys that you like. But nonetheless, I do agree with the sentiment that if you're going to play the odds game, a 25% chance at like a maybe top 50 asset versus getting multiple late second round picks for these types of players right now, I'm probably just going to be on the sell side for those types of offers.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you just said there. This next guy, Skyy Moore, he's someone that I've long said, like, look, and I'm going to stick to this, right? I'm not going out and actively buying Skyy Moore. But in the teams where I did draft Skyy Moore, I'm just not going to move him for the price that he's at because I think there is going to be at least a value bump. And, there is still somewhat hope in Skyy Moore popping off, but it's a very, very dwindled hope.
Well, one thing that he's got going for him is simply that second round picks are more likely to break out in their second or third season in the league than their rookie year. And when you're looking at, it's annoying with what we were saying earlier in the episode where the Chiefs have kind of needed a playmaker. You would have loved for that to be Skyy Moore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going to be thrown necessarily by the wayside. And I'm seeing some players such as Alec Pierce, Brock Purdy. Those two definitely. And then the other players above them, guys like basically the running backs we just listed, Pacheco, Allgeier, James Cook, you can get stuff on top. I think I would try to move. Maybe it's worth moving into Skyy Moore from those types of players. I don't really know. Because now that I'm saying it out loud, I don't think I'm going to be buying any Skyy Moore.
This is how I'll put it. If someone offers me on draft day, rookie draft day, if someone offers me like a 204, 205 for Skyy Moore, I'd have a very hard time rejecting that. And flip side, if I'm sitting at 301 302 and someone's like, hey, I'll give you, I'll give you Skyy Moore for this early pick, I think I'd probably have a tough time rejecting that as well. So that's kind of the range of where I'm buying and selling Skyy Moore. If he starts creeping up into that early second round, I might sell him. If he starts falling back into that third round projections, I might start scooping him up. But right now, it seems like he's more of in that late second where it's just kind of a hold pattern for me.
Well, going back to our earlier conversation about not being in take lock. I'm curious. No. Like, I'm not trying to because I'm curious in Skyy Moore. I liked him in the rookie drafts. I just happened to not draft any of them because I didn't have any of those picks. So it's like, it's not like I was necessarily avoiding him. I just ended up with none of them.
Me being stuck in take lock would be like, I thought he was decently better than Chris Olave. I do not think that anymore. I do not think he's better than Chris Olave.
Wow, good job, JT. You have eyes.
Thank you.
Well, going back to what you were just saying, right? Like, okay, if I could get him for that early third, right? 302, 301, 303, fine. Like, I'll trade it for him. And like, okay, yeah, I could see that, right? An early third for a guy that was going in the first round of rookie drafts a year ago, probably worth the gamble. But if we're trying to learn from our mistakes, not being in take lock and whatnot, is this a scenario where we just mass offer out Skyy Moore for picks 205 to like 209? It's not necessarily a mass offer. We just offer it to those managers that have those draft picks, saying like, okay, if we can get this mid-second, I'm down to just take the L on this pick, but recoup any value.
209 is kind of a tough spot for me, but though that 205, I would send it off. 206, I might. It's kind of just also you gotta see. We're doing this before the NFL draft, and I would like to see the NFL draft where people fall and everything, because I mean, what could be a loaded class could end up not looking as great based on the NFL draft. Like we saw it with, players that I was super high on, like David Bell. All of a sudden just becomes like a very fringe day 2 pick. I think he was like literally the last pick on day 2. So it makes him much less attractive at that price, so if I'm moving from a Skyy Moore into, let's just pretend David Bell was in this draft class and that's who's getting picked at 206, because that's roughly where he was getting picked last year. And then it just feels like I'm moving from a similar level of, like, I get that you are kind of re-rolling, but the situation of where Skyy Moore is and what his upper tail value could be if he ends up being the number 1 receiver on the Chiefs, compared to, like, again, let's continue with David Bell here, what he could be and whatnot, it's not worth it for me, I feel like, to move on, but if you get me a little bit higher than that, then yeah, I'm probably willing to trade.
I'm definitely not trading Skyy Moore until the playoffs are over, because I'm going to hold on to him to see if he's that young player that just kind of comes out of nowhere from the regular season, has maybe even just one good game, right? The Gabe Davis theory, just one game where he pops off like magically, and then all of a sudden it's like, now people expect that for the entire season. But I just kind of think back towards a guy like Rager, who I made the mistake of being like, oh, I will trade my 207 to get in on this guy because I liked him as a prospect and everything. And then you look back 2 years down the line and you're like, well, shit, that was really dumb. I took a guy that I just bailed the guy out. He made the bad pick. He made the mistake, and I bailed him out.
Yeah, well, that's where I'm not going. I'm not trading the seconds for Skyy Moore. Definitely not. But third,
I think that's the point, JT, is that you almost should. I think that's what Frank is trying to say, where you look back and you go, you could still get a Skyy Moore forgiver or whatever we're gonna call it here,
Sure, but in the realm of Skyy Moore and Jalen Reagor, like we're looking at, we're spending a lot of time on this. I feel like we always do.
It's fine. This could be our last player.
Yeah, if we're looking at like how the market has perceived Skyy Moore to what Skyy Moore realistically is doing, like the market's just tanked on Skyy Moore. He was that around where Jalen Reagor was going. He was that one in that rookie draft, albeit a much more stacked rookie draft where Jalen Reagor was going. Skyy Moore's tanked from like that 7th pick to like the 24th pick from that draft kind of thing, where Jalen Reagor, he was still like a mid-second, you know, around that time. Like he was still valued around that mid-second pretty fairly. And, you know, whether it's the Dynasty community getting smarter and, you know, being like, I think it's Bean Counter who does it, the face planners, it's definitely Bean Counter who does that, the face planners, and seeing like, hey, these guys that drop 12 plus ADP from May to May, they're probably guys that you want to get out on. It's just gotten to the point where the value hit that Skyy Moore has already experienced has been greater than the value hit that Jalen Reagor experienced. And so now you're not getting out at like a reasonable cost to get out at. You're getting out at, yeah, he's basically done. With slight upside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I would just... I think I would, though. I think I would just see if I could get all the way down to 210. And I would the problem I have what you said earlier, waiting until the dust settles with the NFL draft and as people get into their prospect evaluations, is that now you put a name to the pick, and then I think people get more attached to those picks. Those late seconds.
I think a lot of people have rose-colored glasses around these picks. I mean, just think of like,
that is true.
Think about players last year where it was like Isaiah Spiller could be that 205, 206. Jalen Werdemeyer could be that too, you know, and then all of a sudden one of those doesn't get drafted. The other doesn't go until I think the 4th round, you know, like, albeit there are people that are going to see boosts, like a Tyquan Thornton, for example, who was not even really on my radar, and then all of a sudden he becomes like a 2nd-round pick. But, you know, like players that people are super high on right now, they're probably not going to be super high on come April, come mid-April, come May when their rookie draft is, you know? Like, things are going to change. I don't know. But yeah, definitely not moving him until the playoffs, after the playoffs.
Right. All right, we can end it here, or we could do one more.
I'll do one more. I'll do this last guy. Trey McBride. I think he's a smash buy.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about him on the Cardinals.
We're all going to be a smash buy on Trey McBride. We all think that the Cardinals offense here is underrated. We saw flashes of Trey McBride following the Zach Ertz injury, and I think he's just due to take the next step moving forward.
I am surprised at how high McBride's price is, because I was very surprised that someone like Isaiah Likely is ranked below. Now, albeit they're right next to each other on the Keep Trade Cut rookie rankings, and essentially the same price, like 40 Keep Trade Cut points apart, which is like one or two votes.
It's the same.
But I was shocked to see that, because I feel like Isaiah Likely just has the trending up arrow when he's played. He's looked pretty good. And you have the excuse of, well, recently, you know, prime Marvin Harrison might be struggling to put up consistent numbers on this current Ravens offense without Lamar, right? Like, so you kind of have the natural built-in excuse for the reason why his production has tailed off.
Yeah, I just think we've gotten to the point where this tight end landscape is going to change, and it's going to change pretty quick, because most of the top tight ends, I mean, we saw it. I think it was like, you know, Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, they're all finishing near the top. Zach Ertz, I think, was a top 5 tight end. You have 4 guys that are, you know, around 30, if not over 30, who are finishing that high. Things are going to change. You're going to have new tight ends that are going to be pushing up the ranks. And albeit there's going to be a point where it's not worth it to trade for these tight ends, because you're not getting that crazy jump from these guys. Like, they are just going to be like what you like to call the waste lords. And there are going to be guys coming out. Everyone's super high on Brock Bowers. He just torched TCU yesterday. But I think if you want a tight end who I think is going to be consistent, he's going to give you, like, he's just that kind of guy that's in your team week in, week out. He does give you kind of a little bit of a flashy upside. I think that is going to be Trey McBride in the future. I think Trey McBride is that kind of guy where he's just consistently giving you a nice floor, but he does have the upside to pop, every now and then. And at that price, I'm in.
This price is like a pretty darn late second.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm buying I'm not sure I'm paying the actual draft pick for him. I may give player equivalent value, but if I have him, I'm sure as hell not selling because I
trade Skyy Moore for Trey McBride. And they're valued roughly. Yeah. Yeah. I really like Trey McBride.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm definitely not selling low. I mean, I would just love to let any of these tight ends ranked around here. So Greg Dulcich, who's like more of like the blue chip of these rookie tight ends right now. I'd love to just have him marinate on my bench. Yeah. Trey McBride, Isaiah Likely, even Chikoziem Okonkwo, someone that I think has looked very impressive on a really
I'm very
impressed
offense.
That
you might have said his name correctly. I wouldn't have even attempted it.
He's someone that I'm probably looking to actively buy in leagues I don't have shares of at that cost. But nonetheless, all of these players, maybe even Daniel Bellinger, I'm not really a big Bellinger guy.
Same.
I just like to hold because these guys need years to marinate to have success. And it's just worth the upside of them potentially marinating into a Goddard type situation. And for whatever reason, the tight end league, even because you could say like, oh, well, these rankings aren't tight end premium. Over half of Superflex leagues, a majority of them, around 60 to 65%, are tight end premium. So apparently people voting on this thing, most of them should be in tight end premium leagues. The tight ends still, compared to their basically same level of receiver counterparts, just get that little kick in the shin. Right, the fact that Alec Pierce is like 200 points above Trey McBride when they're both like mid as fuck, like both two dudes to me that like have just play a lot but don't produce. It's not worth selling these tight ends at that slight discount. It's just worth holding or buying.
Yeah, that sums it up nicely.
So,
anything else?
Yeah, I think that'll be it from us here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Next week we should have a mock draft coming in, as long as we want to get the whole squad here for that first mock draft. Listen, I've got some spicy takes coming up. I've got some spicy takes.
Tweet one out today at 3rd and 20 on Twitter.
Yeah, I imagine we'll get into this stuff in the future episodes, so I'll save it for then. But yeah, man, starting to dive into these prospects, starting off with the running backs. I've liked some of what I've seen, and I have not liked others. But thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Peace out.
Thanks, everyone.